Gacha games are centered around their characters. There's a lot of work put into them after all, from their integration into the game's overall story, their fantastic visual design, to their intricate mechanics in their kits. New characters, specifically the limited ones, are one of the main ways for devs to appeal to and drive sales across their player base. There are a lot of ways for developers to generate hype for a new release. It could address a gap in players' rosters, round out the team roles for a specific attribute, or perhaps the most controversial of all, have better or higher numbers than others. New characters bring a lot of excitement, but they can also bring a lot of concern, specifically to your existing ones. They could be limited, standard, or completely free. What's true is that players need to level up, upgrade, and gear characters to have any chance of clearing content across the game. And when those efforts are fueled by a combination of time and RNG, nobody wants their efforts feeling like they were wasted by having their character overshadowed by a new release. For some standard characters, a fate like this is inevitable, as you'll naturally accumulate dupes from lost 50/50s over time. But for a limited character, this can be a nightmare. While many gacha games have seen the earliest additions to their limited cast completely outshadowed in as little as a year, Wuthering Waves is a game where that will likely never happen, and that's due to the intricate balancing systems present across every single character, all stemming from a single stat: damage percent. The design of this balancing system ensures that almost no character, regardless of how early they were released, will meet that shameful fate of riding the bench. Today we'll be breaking down why this is the case, diving into how Kuro's implementation of damage percent is absolutely genius, how this system ensures long-term viability of almost every DPS and support character in the game, and how its interaction with attributes and team building promotes some of the most diverse and creative gameplay within not just the gacha genre, but gaming as a whole. As always, if you're enjoying this content, please hit that like and subscribe button. One of the defining characteristics of every single DPS character is how they inflict their damage. With a multitude of different attacks and abilities in every kit, there's a large emphasis placed on using some attacks instead of others to get the most performance. Some abilities will simply do more damage than others. It's clear when looking at our limited releases that every character has their own specialty, like Jian with heavy attacks, Jinxie with resonance skill damage, and Shangli Yao with liberation damage. This is extremely comparable to games like Genshin Impact, where you have certain characters that rely on one attack exclusively, sometimes a bit too much. However, Kuro did something brilliant to differentiate these attack types in actual gameplay. They categorized every possible attack in a character's kit and added a unique damage multiplier to these types. This system, at first, could seem like an unnecessary addition. What's the need for additional damage multipliers when there's a baseline one for every single attribute? Why not just have one number? Many could view this mechanic as an extra complication in an already mechanically intensive game. But this system has major advantages. The first being that it will take a huge amount of time to completely power creep any character. For a character like Jian to be power crept, Kuro would need to release a new arrow character that also specializes in heavy attack damage. It isn't as simple as just releasing a new character in the same element, like Genshin Impact. When there are 6 attributes and 4 different damage types, Kuro would need to release over 24 main DPS characters to even start double dipping. Genshin Impact, over 4 years of development, doesn't even have that many limited DPS characters yet. Second is that this system also makes the game far easier to balance in the long run. When a majority of a character's damage is dealt through a single type, and that specific type has its own unique multiplier, this makes it very easy to adjust the performance of existing characters with new updates to the game. Games like Genshin Impact explore mechanics regarding damage types, but they seem more like an afterthought tacked onto a character's kit or weapon effect instead of meaningful integration into the game. Wuthering Waves brings this mechanic front and center on every stat page. However, there are very few ways to get specific damage bonuses in Wuthering Waves. When it comes to a single character, the only sources are your weapon effects, the inherent abilities or sequence nodes, and of course, your Echo substats. When the only ways to upgrade this stats outside of gacha pulls is RNG, these stats could seem a bit insignificant at first. However, Wuthering Waves isn't meant to be a game where you only play a single character. This is evident through the design of Sonata sets, party buffs, and perhaps most importantly, outro skills. These very outro skills are the primary reason for why Wuthering Waves has some of the best character balancing in gacha gaming. Sub-DPS characters all come equipped with a specific buffing outro skill that can either target a whole attribute, like with Alto and Danjin, target a specific damage type, like with Mortifi or Sanhua, or simply do a blend of both, like with Yinlin and Jeja. When these outro skills are a completely separate multiplier that amplify your total damage after all of your character's stat calculations, they are easily some of the most powerful in the game. This also means that one of the biggest contributors to a DPS character's performance isn't necessarily their substats or equipment, but simply the teammate that they're being used with, and new teammates get added to the game all the time. If there's ever a scenario where a character like Jian is falling behind in the meta, all Kuro would need to do is release a specialized sub-DPS with an outro skill that buffs arrow damage and heavy attack damage, much like how Zhongli Yao and Calcs have access to Yinlin, and that's just through one ability in their kit. And if a character like Jeja or Chong-Li falls behind, all you need is a Glacial Resonance skill DPS or a Fusion Resonance Liberation DPS to immediately bring them back to the forefront. The only way older characters fall out of the meta is from the release of new ones, so it makes perfect sense for those new releases to bring them back in. That's a balancing system with built-in future proofing, and it's completely genius. However, there's another huge benefit to the design of outro skills, and that's the fantastic way that they interact with the design of the Tower of Adversity, WuWa's endgame mode. With an energy system and the ability to freely slot in characters across the three sides of the tower, you're heavily incentivized as a player to mix and match different characters to get through all 10 fights, and this can lead to some unorthodox team compositions that have a surprising amount of synergy. A character like Chong-Li, for example, that buffs fusion and liberation damage, ends up working fantastically with Zhongli Yao, even though he doesn't get any benefits from half of her buff. But the fact he gets any benefit at all is enough, and that's just one example. As more and more characters with different damage types release, this potential can only grow. At the present, the opportunities for additional team building can seem a bit constrained, but think about a future where we have an attribute and damage type buffer for every single possible combination. That's a lot of characters and a lot of potential team comps. And that's all because of how Kuro implemented a single mechanic. And this mechanic, it's only gonna get better with age. As always, if you enjoyed this content, please hit that like and subscribe button. Peace out.